Hello, YouTube. My name is Kanga, and I have anxiety and depression. Two things that are not fun to deal with at any point, but I find they're especially not fun to deal with when trying to be an internet personality, because we're often forced, or at least feel forced, to put our best foot forward at all times. So today, I interviewed 9 other content creators to hear their thoughts on mental health and its ties to the internet. Enjoy. How has the internet negatively and/or positively affected your mental health as an individual?
So it's definitely affected me both ways, negatively and positively. I would say, see, the internet, y- there's so much out there, and
Hmm.
you get exposed to so much, both positive and negative. So, of course, the positive things are going to make me feel better. Being able to talk to my friends, the friends I've met through the internet, I mean, that's my safe space, that's my family. They've definitely positively affected me. But there's, of course, the negative side as well. Seeing negative things online, hate online, anything negative is, of course, going to mess with my mental health. I mean, I know, just like an example, during like high school, I remember I would see my friends like put things on social media. Maybe I was like left out of something. I know that would really affect my mental health. Just things like that. Like it has both positives and its negatives.
We were both in the sort of age group where we definitely had social media in school. Some friendships I think would have been better if we didn't for that exact
Yeah.
reason.
I also feel like our generation, we kind of got hit with social media at like a weird point. So like our
Mhm.
generation is so strange. Like the generation before us, they got introduced to social media once they were like, adults. We got kind of hit with it around, kind of like puberty basically. So when people were exposed to social media, it was just a very strange time in our lives.
It's definitely affected it in both ways at different points. I mean, like overall, it has helped shape me into a better person than I was when I was younger, and having access to so much information and content just like in your pocket is very well can be very beneficial, but then it also can have the opposite effect, namely like social media can be very detrimental to your mental health. I've enjoyed like talking to people and having a presence online, but it is also stressful at times. I've heard multiple people say that the human brain wasn't built to be like exposed to this many people all at once, and like I can definitely feel that, because I mean a lot of the time I do kind of wish that I could just wind back time and go back to like lurking in the background, not really having much of a presence, but just like consuming content. And obviously, I can do that, but it's like I also enjoy it at the same time. There is good that comes out of it, but there's also a lot of bad. It's like it's difficult to balance internet usage, I guess. That
No,
makes sense.
it definitely is hard to balance because you can't necessarily control where the bad is coming from.
Yeah, a lot of the time you can't control what you see, which I feel is one of the problems. Like obviously you can, like social media, you can like block people, you can mute people, but there will always be stuff that you see that will upset you. But I'm not really sure what the solution to that would be. Yeah, like you said, you never know what's gonna pop up.
I don't I don't know, cause like for the internet, I feel like it wouldn't necessarily affect my mental health any other way as like I would have if we didn't have internet, if that makes sense. For context, I am diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. Those things are always in like fluctuation. Like some weeks I'll just be like super out of it or like panicky, or then another week I'll be like perfectly fine. And it doesn't matter the amount of time I spend on the internet or not, or like what I do. It's just kind of like a cycle, if that makes sense. So I feel like I can't really accurately say whether or not the internet positively or negatively impacts me because it's just something that I do. And I feel like I would feel this way even if I didn't have the internet. So like if I were going to work or if I was just outside all the time, I would still like have those ups and downs. So I feel like, I don't know, it's a very like interesting question. It's like, what would it be if you didn't have like the internet? If that's kind of like how I'm thinking about it. But also, when I talk to people or I like play games, I'll get like super down if like something goes wrong, or like if I get ghosted for a little while, then I'm like, oh no, what did I do? But like at the same time, it would be like that if I was just talking to people in person, or if I was doing stuff in person. We exist, something's knocked down, things will have a positive impact. So it's a balance.
Do you think there'd be a difference in you suddenly not having the internet anymore versus if you'd never had it?
Ooh, yeah, I would be so depressed, honestly. I think I would have such a like depressive period because a lot of the people that I talk to are online. And so to suddenly like take something away that I do a lot, I think I would be like really down, but I think I would also like make a comeback. It's kind of like when you lose like your favorite toy or like something that you do all the time, and it's like, okay, there's gonna be a readjustment period, but I think it would be just like any like major loss. Like the context will change, but how I would feel would probably be the same.
So for a lot of my childhood, I did have the internet, and there's a few ways it helped me and a few ways it didn't. But one of the ways that it didn't help me was there is a lot of negativity on the internet, whether it's being told to off myself, or just being plain insulted or all that stuff. That was negative. But another thing is a lot of positive like support systems and having that sort of friendship that I wouldn't be able to have in real life. The same connections you get online you don't really get in person, which can be kind of a double-edged sword.
The only positive that I can name that the internet has done is I have made so many friends through it. Obviously, I would never have met you if it wasn't for the internet. And that's about it. I can't really name many positives that the internet has other than like community. Like you find so many cool people, but then at the same time, that's such a negative. The internet is a not very nice place. To name a place, Twitter. Not a very nice place to be. And I feel like if you spend too much time on places like that, it very much negatively, like you see people about like body image and like you see other people feeding into those negative thoughts online. And then if you're looking at all of that and you're seeing all the negative thoughts, then you end up thinking like that and it ends up just as a downward spiral. But yeah, I don't think I can name very many positive things the internet's done for my mental health other than like I've met so many amazing people through it that I definitely would not have met. I'm going based off of like Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. That's all based on things that you look at and you like and post and stuff. So if you like something that's kind of negative, your entire pages are full of negativity because it's based off of that. And it's also based off things you talk about because your phone's definitely listening to you. But like even if you just casually like a sad post on accident, that's it. Like your entire page is going to end up with these sad posts coming up over and over again. And then you're reading it and you're like, oh. And then you get in your own head and then it's like you just end up spiraling. It's just not good.
In my personal life, it has negatively affected it way too much. Between that whole everything's picture perfect on social media, that, and then comparing yourself to everybody else all of the time. And if you're not always active on social media, it looks bad. That kind of stuff it was rough. Honestly, only my online friends, that would be it. And that's just because it's easier for me as somebody who is disabled to go and make friends online.
That is totally fair. I think a lot of people make online friends, but when you have something like a disability or a chronic illness, I think people don't realize how important being able to connect that way is.
It's definitely had like negative and positive effects on me specifically. I know that a lot of other people have different experiences, of course, but for me, being on the internet growing up, it has allowed me to meet so many people and make friends that I would have never interacted with otherwise. Like, I know people from across the country, many different countries, who I never, absolutely never would have met if not for the internet and specifically content creation. It allowed me to branch out and grow in confidence a lot in making content and interacting with people because I'm autistic. So I struggled a lot growing up with making friends and social situations in particular. So having that outlet to learn and grow in the social, area was definitely really helpful for me. But like, on the other hand, there are a lot of things wrong with the internet, and especially getting on the internet as young as some people do. I was exposed to a lot of things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, like hatred, violence, and like explicit things that I definitely shouldn't have seen as young as I was on the internet. It definitely has had both negative and positive effects on me.
It's definitely done sort of both, because obviously with so much information and a lot of it being negative, it's hard for it to not at least some way negatively affect you. So you get news from all over the world about everything, and usually the things that are worth going worldwide are the bad things. So that doesn't help at all.
That is unfortunately very true.
But that is like general internet stuff. I think it's great because with the internet, I can have all of these great friends that I do have without having to go out anywhere. It's great for me as an introvert. And it's great because so many great people are on the internet, and being able to meet and talk to so many wonderful people and being able to like have these people as your friends and be able to talk about life with them, I would say that definitely affects my mental health in a good way. I can be me, they can be them, and we don't have to really worry about too much. And, we help each other. It is literally worldwide, which is great for meeting new people and meeting people with common interests and stuff.
I will start with positively because there's a lot of good things about the internet, good things about it being able to connect us to other individuals. I've met so many of my best friends online, and there are certain aspects that I find that I really dislike about it. As much as a happy place it can be, there are sometimes people you may run into on the internet that will drag you down and actively try to just hinder any kind of positive results you would get from, like, I don't know, streaming, content creation. There's recent stuff that has happened with me too, where somebody may just not like me, but spread a lot of nasty negative rumors about me that aren't true, and then like you have to deal with the aftermath of that. It greatly affects and like kind of like discourages me, and it just, I guess it hurts a little bit, because the internet, as much of as a nice and good opportune place it can be, there is a lot of negativity still surrounding it from different people, and that's something that I am very careful of. It sometimes gets me to the point where I don't show a lot of emotion, but it'll start slowing my progress of wanting to do more. So effects of not wanting to play on SMPs much because of the negativity surrounding it, and or not wanting to do a lot in my IRL because it affects my brain. Maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not a nice person, maybe I'm just, and you just start overthinking, and it really doesn't help a lot.
It definitely takes time to get used to, because people are so much more willing to say harsh things online when they're behind that screen and there's no real consequences for them.
Yeah, there's almost like there's no filter and they can say whatever they want to, and it's, as much as it's like disheartening and it will affect you, at the end of the day, just don't give them or pay them any mind. They're just people that'll say something to get you down. And the best thing that I found out is by beating the negativity striving for greater and better things. And that's where like my mind track is at. As much as it may affect my mental health and it may get me down, the positive facts of having good friends on the internet also help out, because they're always super supportive and super like, you know, helpful, and like if I need something, they'll be there for me.
Do you think being a content creator has directly affected your mental health in a way that you would not have experienced if you were just consuming content online or not really online at all?
I would say so, for sure. And I know we talked about this a little bit in the last interview video you did. The numbers and the analytical side of content creation can definitely affect your mental health, especially if this is something that you want to pursue full time or you rely on it financially. If you're not performing well, that's of course going to stress you out and cause your your mental health to be affected negatively. And that's happened to me. So that's something that I experienced that I guess someone who is not a content creator probably doesn't care about. They don't really care about the numbers too much, especially if it's not something that they rely on financially.
Yeah, the financial aspect can have a huge effect on your mental health. Similar way to the financial aspect of any job, of course. If you're not making ends meet, then that's super stressful.
Absolutely.
Do you think social media would still affect your mental health if you were just a viewer? Like, do you think you'd have to go fully zero social media in order for it to not affect you? Or do you think you could just be a consumer and you'd be fine?
I think if I was just a viewer, a chatter, or I didn't do content creation, I think it would still have its negative effects mentally. Kind of what we already mentioned, there's going to be positives and there's going to be negatives for sure. Before I was a content creator, again, going back to like high school and seeing, oh, my friends like went to a party without me, or I know like, I struggle with anxiety a lot, so seeing people like go out and do things that I know I couldn't do because of my social anxiety, that affected me a lot. I don't think it really matters whether I'm a content creator or not. I do think being on the internet and social media in general would definitely still have its negative effects, but positive ones as well.
Do you think the negative ones outweigh the positive?
It's hard to say because it's like the negatives, you focus on that a lot more because it hits a lot harder. But when it comes to the internet, there are really so many positive things. I mean, we truly do have everything at our fingertips. At the end of the day, I do think that the internet's a great tool, and I think that the positives outweigh the negatives, but because the negatives hit a lot harder, we don't really focus on the positive, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I completely understand. There's definitely more positives, but we as anxiety havers are not entirely capable of focusing on those more than the negatives.
Yeah, for sure.
It's that sort of like there's no amount of cute puppy pictures that make up for that terrible war picture you saw. Like,
exactly. It's always going to be the negative things that you see that stick in your brain more than, something cute or a positive article that you read.
There's definitely a unique kind of pressure to just be constantly pushing forward. My content creator journey has been just like a whole mess. I don't really have the constant energy to be constantly pushing forward my content. It's been very on and off. I mean, for a while, I felt bad about that. I mean, also still now, I do still feel a bit bad about it. If I'm not able to keep up and keep growing as a creator, then should I even be doing this in the first place? But I just kind of try to remind myself that it doesn't really matter at all. Like, as long as I'm going at my own pace and enjoying it, that's all that really matters. It's like if I don't want to be uploading 50 videos a day, uploading 100 TikToks, and then also posting them on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts every single day, I don't have to do that.
yeah, there are probably people who'll be sad when we post less or stream less, but
you are the only one stressing out that much about the not posting. Just like I'm the only one stressing out about myself not posting. Everyone else is like, oh, well, it'd be nice to see posts from you, but they're not as stressed as we think they are.
Yeah, and it's like, as much as I want to please people, it's like, I try to remind myself that it's not worth it if I'm not enjoying it and it's affecting me negatively. Having a presence online, it feels like there are like constant eyes on you. Like even if you're not getting like high numbers or whatever, it just feels like your every move is being watched, and it can get a bit stressful. Something I noticed was I struggled to enjoy anything off stream, because the constant thing that would be in my brain was, I should be making content out of this. Why am I not making content out of this? This would be good content. It's like I wasn't allowing myself any time to just I wasn't allowing myself any time to myself. And I feel like that was very apparent in my like first couple years of streaming, because I was streaming like every single day, just because I felt the obligation to, pretty much. Like I was enjoying it most of the time, but I was like just constantly pushing to do streams, and like everything that I did online, I would feel the obligation to do it on stream. It's hard to find that balance, I think, because right now I'm barely streaming. I'm doing like loads of things off stream. That's like mostly because I've started going to uni and I've had like no energy or time. It's like at this point I've like barely streamed, and it's at the point where it's like I don't have a strong desire to stream many things anymore. The only things I end up streaming is like pre-planned stuff by other people, or like occasionally I'll try and plan like a multiplayer lobby with some people, but like that desire to like stream often has kind of faded. I've come from the two extremes where I'm streaming every day, and now I'm like barely streaming at all. I feel like a lot of people probably struggle with that, where it's hard to find your specific balance, like what schedule works for you.
Balance is definitely a hard thing with both the internet and mental health, for sure. With what you're saying about the balance of wanting to stream, it's definitely hard when you're doing something like university. It's new and you're busy, but then you still have that voice in the back of your head that's like, I need to be posting.
Yeah, like the main thing I have been doing recently is just posting clips to Reels, Shorts, and TikTok, and that's been like for like most of the content I've been putting out. Honestly, has been nice, because it's like an easy thing that I can do where I still feel like I'm getting content out while not stressing myself out over it and having time for my newfound responsibilities. I feel like for a lot of my life, making content online has given me a purpose. It's been like my main like hobby, and it's been something to work towards. Like I started properly streaming on Twitch as twos in 2020, but before then, like when I was way younger, had tried like multiple times. I would often do like Minecraft videos and Let's Play videos and that sort of thing. Then I like stopped for a while, and I came back, and I tried to do commentary videos for some reason, and that's kind of been like throughout my life. That's just been like my constant goal, it seems. I think it definitely got difficult because it never really overly went anywhere. I mean, I had a bit of success like early on, where I had a video that like kind of went a bit crazy, but looking back on it now, like I can't be proud of it, because all I did was just like steal a bunch of clips and like put them together. I made a little try not to laugh video. It's like back then I was like, oh my god, this video is doing so well. I'm so proud of all the work that I did. But looking back on it now, I'm just like, okay, so I didn't really do anything. Like that, like thinking back on it now, content creation has just been like a constant thing in my life, just in different forms. Earlier on, it was like mostly YouTube. Now it's mostly streaming, because I hate editing. But go back to the purpose thing. That was like, for a long time, it felt like that was the only thing I wanted to do and could do. But now that I've started university, doing something that I'm actually interested in, that's kind of become my new purpose. Like I now have something that I'm working towards. And there's a more clear path as well, because it's all planned out for me. With content creation, it's just like I have to figure it all out myself, do my own things. And I think I was struggling with that because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a gap year after I did A levels. Didn't feel like I wanted to go to university because school didn't go very well for me, and I felt it would just go the same. So I was trying to find a job. I was struggling, and I was also even with so much free time, I was still struggling to content out and like actually lock in on content. I think that's kind of where I realized, at least right now, I don't think it's what I want to. Well, it might be what I want to. I like the idea of doing it, but I don't enjoy it enough for it to become my main focus. And I think that's kind of why when the opportunity of university arose again, I kind of jumped at the opportunity because I just wanted something to do. And now that I have that, I have this new purpose. It's like I don't feel the strong need to keep streaming every single day and constantly be putting out content. Like, it's still there because I would love to be able to do streaming for a living, and also just the fact that I also kind of feel bad just like completely just dipping off the face of the earth, because I do still enjoy parts about it. I enjoy playing on stream with other streamer friends. I enjoy playing D&D on stream and that sort of thing. That's like the main thing. I don't so much enjoy streaming for the sake of streaming anymore. Picking up like a game and streaming it on my own. I like just having fun with people and making content out of it.
I feel like it would, because like now you're talking about thinking a certain way rather than like interaction with something as a whole. So now it's down to like specifically what you're doing with your time, and that will, I feel like, alter how you think about things, which in turn would alter your mental health. But unless it's like a very stark difference, I don't think it would affect it too much. If all I did was consume content, I think I would be a lot lonelier than I am now, because creating content has allowed me to actually reach out to people and join things. Wasn't creating content, I wouldn't have reached out to as many people that I did, and therefore I wouldn't be a part of a lot of the things that I do now, or really have the goals in mind that I do. So I feel like there's probably a very large difference in mental health and like just how we do things compared to consumption versus creation.
I think pointing out the people you've met is good. That's a big one for me, for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, that's probably it for me, like the people, because when I create stuff, I can do it both in person and online, because I create art, things that are tangible as well. So it's not like without the internet, I wouldn't be like stuck without doing anything. I would still have like a lot of stuff to do, but I have like no one that I talk to in person besides like at work. So like online has definitely expanded my social network, if that makes sense. And so I feel like just consuming media, you're just sitting there kind of watching stuff, not really like, sure, you'll talk, but a lot of times you're not gonna like join stuff or really put yourself out there, I feel like, because I'll interact with people who like only watch stuff or only consume things. There is a distinction between the two.
I think it kind of has, because when you are in the content creation, you get to see how people are behind the scenes. Even if you're not one of the like bigger ones, you're just more kind of small, you still get that connection to like middle-ranged people occasionally, and you get to see how they are behind the screen versus on the screen, and it kind of gives you a whole new perspective, kind of shifts how you think of people online. I think that's something that's different.
If it's someone who you started watching and then you later sort of like entered their circle or became friends with them.
Yeah. With a lot of the people that were in Reaper, SMP, Jinkies, everything, it was like a big difference. Not like difference, it could be in a bad way or in a good way, perspective wise, but you get to see their different like what they like to do outside of stream, what they like to talk about that they can't talk about on stream. It's like you get a different perspective, and then you get to also see a lot of their faults that they're able to kind of retract.
Some people intentionally put an act on camera and you're like aware that they're sort of playing a character, whereas other people, you would have no idea that they're different.
Mind-boggling at first. Then you just kind of realize we're all human.
I don't think anyone is 100% themselves in their content, because sometimes we're boring. You know, like sometimes you, like, realistically, we're all boring sometimes. We all have sad days. Like sometimes you need to put on a little bit of a happy act.
There has been a lot of times where you know creators and you're like, wow, they are entirely different people. Entirely different. Like, and sometimes not in a good way.
Yeah, the switch up can be crazy sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of like a shockwave.
100%. Like, I feel like, yeah. Especially when I first started on Twitch, especially streaming, people well, for me anyway, because I use Facecam and stuff, people can like directly make comments about things they can see. And like, if that's something you're insecure about, then that's it. Like, one comment really does get to you. Would never have expected that. I expected people to be mean, but like sometimes they really tried to dig deep, and I'm sat there and I try and laugh it off a lot of the time, because I'm like, if you laugh at them, then they don't care, and then they move on. But like, some of the things that these people come out with, and you're just sat there and there's like nothing you can do until that stream's over. Like, other than like ban the person, I guess. But even then, banning them, that's just all you can do.
Yeah, you already had to deal with the comment. You already internalized it.
You've already taken that comment and like that's stuck with you, and now there's nothing you can do about that comment but ban the person. Banning them's not going to take away the fact they said it. And I feel like it doesn't bother me as much, not that I've streamed recently, but it doesn't bother me as much now because I'm older and I'm able to realize that like, oh, they're just making a comment just because they're bored. Like, they're just making a comment because like, what else are they gonna do? Like, they're obviously bored. But when I first started content creation, it used to really get to me. Like, these people are just like coming into my chat, and obviously I didn't have that many viewers, and these people are coming in just to be mean, and it's like, why?
Based on what I've been talking to people about who I've already interviewed for this, live streaming seems to be pretty what people identify as the harshest on your mental health.
Oh yeah, like, people don't bother going onto my YouTube to make comments. But it seems that like, if I go onto Twitch, especially when I first started, at least once every 3 streams, I would have somebody say something mean. Like, even if it was just something like, you don't seem very good at this. Like, something so small as that, and then something as big as like, I've had people make fun of my appearance and stuff. There was never any need for that. But if I go onto YouTube, I don't get that. Not saying YouTube is great or anything, but just saying that I've had less hate on YouTube than I have on Twitch.
Yeah, every social media is different, but I think it's also just easier to not internalize a YouTube comment, because you can read it, delete it, and it's done. Whereas on a live stream, everyone else who's there has just seen you read this comment, and you're sort of in the moment.
And like, even if mods delete it, even if you delete it, everybody has seen it by that point. Like, even in big streamers' chats, it's like most of the chat has seen it before it gets deleted. And it's even harder when it's a small streamer, because there's not as much chatting going on, so it's easier to see all of that harsh comments.
It's definitely hard to learn how to deal with that.
Oh, absolutely. So for me, with my ADHD, I am very bad at keeping a schedule. I wouldn't have had that stress if it wasn't, like, if I was just consuming content instead of creating it. But at the same time, it's also been something pretty worthwhile. So it does balance it out, but I would not have had the satisfaction from creating content or that stress of being like, I have to get this out on time.
Double-edged sword, because it helps you in a way to like get better at doing that, but at the same time, it's really, if you just weren't a content creator, you wouldn't need to do it.
Yeah, I constantly am running around like a chicken with my head cut off, being like, oh wait, I have to edit this.
Yeah, deadlines is definitely a tough one. Do you think there's anything else? Like, do you think there are any benefits you get from being a creator that you'd miss out on otherwise?
Not really at my size. I don't really have any partnerships with games or anything like that yet, so I'm just surprised anybody shows up at all, so it's always a good thing when somebody does.
That's definitely a positive for me, is that little burst of joy. I'm like, oh my god, people want to come watch me play video games.
Honestly, yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. I don't really think of it as a source of joy because I'm like, oh, as soon as stream's over, I'm like, all right, now I have to do this, that, and the other.
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of sit with it for a second and be like, even though I have to go, do my laundry and see the doctor and feed my cat, I gotta sit for a second and play a game I enjoy, and other people just showed up to watch me. I feel like that's sort of a weird thing on the internet where we're like, oh my god, people are watching me, that's cool. But
yeah,
it is a benefit.
It definitely is. I'm the type that out of sight, out of mind. Like once the stream's done, I'm like, okay, I have this, that, and the other. It doesn't really stick around, but I still do appreciate my community.
If you never did those streams, do you think you would maybe have worse mental health?
For me personally, it is definitely something to look forward to. I don't really get out of the house much. And when I wasn't streaming, it was more of a, oh, I'm just gonna sit here, be bored, try and figure out what I want to play. But with having those streams, it definitely motivates me. And my mental health is definitely better for it.
I feel like, once again, I wouldn't have nearly the amount of confidence I do now if I had never started making content. I met some of my best friends online doing content, like doing collaborations and streaming together and stuff like that. That's how I made a lot of my very good friends now. So in that way, it was like really, really positive. But when you start making content, you put yourself out there and you open yourself up to a lot of scrutiny from people who do not know you. And that can be so stressful, especially as like when I started making content, I was 16, 17. And being 16 and 17, you're like more insecure than you've ever been. Like opening yourself up to that scrutiny and like people making judgment calls on you that have never met you, do not know you, do not know who you are as a person. It's very stressful and very hard, like especially as a teenager. It's also, when you start making content, you suddenly have to be a lot more careful about what you say and what personal information you give people access to. I have been doxxed multiple times. Especially as a minor, I was doxxed, and it was an extremely, extremely stressful situation. So like when you start making content, you open yourself up to that. That is something that comes with making content, especially as you start to become a bigger content creator. So you have to be a lot more careful, and just being any kind of content creator comes with judgment and hate from people who you don't know. But it definitely has negative effects on your mental health, especially as a teenager.
Obviously, doxing and like personal information are still scary on the internet regardless. But if you're just some random, people aren't actively seeking it out. Whereas the more popularity you gain, the more risky it is. We've seen far too many big creators get like swatted or sent like trackers in the mail. Just really terrifying things.
Having to be so careful about what you say so people can't find that information is just another added layer of like, oh god, I have to be so careful about saying this and saying that and saying what state I'm in or saying what place I live and stuff like that.
And you sometimes don't even think about the smaller things. Like you'll say, oh, I went to this place for lunch, and then in your head you go, crap, that's a local place.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, surely no one picked up on that.
But sometimes they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely hard on the mental health for sure.
For sure. Because especially being a content creator, I have a lot more that I do online than if I was just someone who consumed content online. Because I have a lot more to worry about. And even it doesn't even have to be like I'm worrying about it, but like I have a lot more that I deal with. A lot more work I do online. And it can affect my mental health in a variety of ways. Like, it can be really great to find great people that are also content creators, and you have that shared interest that you're both content creators, and that can form bonds a lot quicker. But then, of course, there's always going to be like the negative side of like numbers, and like when you do worse than you usually do, that's not great, and that's gonna negatively influence your mental health. It can also directly influence, or maybe not directly, but slightly indirectly, because like even if you're not online at all, you still work a job and you have like the stress. Well, you probably have stresses related to that job, but most of them are while you're working. Whereas being a content creator, you set your own times and schedule and stuff, and so you can. It's a lot harder to only worry about things while you're on the clock, so to speak, because in theory, you could always be on the clock. It's a lot easier to overwork yourself into burnout and do too much and worry too much when you're your own boss as a content creator and you're doing everything yourself. It's a lot to manage, I'll admit.
Yeah, it's definitely different when you are setting your hours versus someone else. I think that applies to any sort of like self-employment, not just an internet job.
Anywhere where you're your own boss, basically. Someone else to give you your hours, giving yourself a lot more hours than you really should have. In a typical job, hours means pay. With content creation, that's not necessarily the case, especially as a Twitch streamer. Especially as a small Twitch streamer, hours do not mean work. Hours do not mean pay. It's directly, like, as a Twitch streamer, you do get money from ads, but that's not a whole lot of money. Most of your money will come from subscribers and bits and other outside third-party donations, and that's not from your hours. That's just from doing it in general. And with other kinds of content creation like YouTube or TikTok, I don't know exactly how TikTok works. I hear it sucks, but YouTube at least, it's like the amount of hours you put into making a video does not necessarily relate to how many hours are watched and how much money comes from those hours watched. And so it's a lot more stressful, and especially if like it's your priority, it's your one source of income is content creation, it's going to be a lot more stressful because it's also not really secure, because at any moment you could just, like, your account could get suspended, the internet could disappear, your internet could go down, anything could happen. And while it's best not to think about those things, because realistically they're not very likely to happen, but they are still possibilities. And so it's not a very stable job, which is why a lot of people also have other jobs on the side, which just increases the amount of overall stress.
You know, it has, in a way, it has affected my exhaustion. And like, if I was just watching a video and everything like that, I'd be fine. I'd be like, you know, okay, I shouldn't just go to bed, go to work the next day. But being a content creator is just, it exhausts you at some points, because maybe some days you're like, I can go through a week of streaming and like maybe 2 weeks of streaming and be okay. But then there's the fortunate moments where you're like, brain is like, I'm not doing that good. Oh shit. My view counts aren't up as much as I expected them to be. Oh no. And then like you start overthinking. Overthinking, like I said in the previous question, is a huge part of being a content creator, because you're always thinking that you're never good enough. You're always thinking that like you could be doing more, and that I've seen from different creators, it puts a strain on their mental health, because you're always thinking and being in your own head, and it does affect your exhaustion levels. Because if you think too much about something, you then grow exhausted and not wanting to do as much as you wanted to do. Maybe like produce, like, I don't know, 5 videos a week to maybe once a month. And then that kind of kills a lot of motivation. For a year, I streamed about every day for that entire year, and I got to 1,000 followers. Now, did that feel good? Hell yeah, it did. I was at 55 viewers and everything like that. However, because I streamed so much, it became a little bit boring, and I took a break and I lost what I had. And that's like, you know, that's not great, because with Twitch, the viewers and the views also come at a price. You have to be streaming every day or at least on a consistent base schedule to keep all of that. And just seeing the slow plummet of everything, it's not great. It doesn't make you feel good. It's like you take no breaks kind of thing. It's like you can't take a break. You can take a break, but have that consistent schedule where you can actually take a break. It just takes a lot of effort and slowly dealing with things to have what you want to have. It just takes a bit. But yeah, it is taxing on the mind. It is that question of, will you be good enough and will you be able to do what everybody else does? So that's the mental tax that comes with being a content creator.
Yeah, burnout is very real. I definitely wouldn't have lasted a full year of streaming every day.
I was I was 21 when I did that, and I just had so much energy, and I realized it was going somewhere. I should have kept with it, but it was because of that burnout. So my whole thing is, don't stream every day, be consistent but on a different schedule, or your mental health will be shot by the time you're doing everything every day. You won't want to do it. It'll affect something, and burnout is a huge thing.
Do you think internet access should be more restricted based on age, type of content, or anything else you can think of?
It's hard to say because I do think that there are good restrictions in place. They're just not followed, you know? Like, children are going to lie about their age to maybe see something they shouldn't. And I do think with like the newer generation, they're growing up with technology, so they just kind of have it all right in front of them. And I think that that's a very scary thing. And the thing is, the restrictions are in place. Like, there are safe zones for kids, but they're not always utilized. I mean, there's like YouTube Kids where it is only safe content, but a lot of the time, maybe parents, they don't know about it, or they just maybe normal YouTube for their kids, and they can be exposed to really bad things. Or, I mean, that goes for all corners of the internet, really. It's just, there are restrictions in place, but people don't really care about them. And I wish that people did. Like, I don't think there's so many, the internet is wild, and there's so many things that children should not be exposed to until a certain age. But unfortunately, that just kind of gets looked over a lot. And having the internet at your fingertips, being able to do anything, it doesn't really matter your age. You can get around things.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. I agree that it'd be nice if child-friendly spaces were better utilized, but at the same time, I think a lot of children have had such unlimited access to the internet that if their parents were like, oh, you can only watch YouTube Kids, that would just encourage them to go behind the parents' back and do the opposite.
Yeah, I do think, like, it's just, there should be more restrictions, but kids are gonna go around them, like you said.
The internet is a very powerful resource. And, I mean, it can be used for good, but it could also be used for bad. But I think cutting off younger people off from such a powerful resource is not the way to go about it. So much information and like content available to you can be very beneficial with assisting like younger people where they're going through like studies and like going through difficult times, they having like the perfect distractions at your fingertips, you know? I do feel like there should be, I mean, I'm sure there are ways of doing this, but there should be more like widely used ways of restricting it. Whereas like they have access to all the useful things while like shielding them from the bad, you know? What we were saying earlier about how you never know what you see, like we might see like a stupid opinion on Twitter and get annoyed about it, but we'll just kind of just dismiss it. But like a child could see that, I mean, or like a younger person could see that, and like they could either be like, their viewpoint could be like shifted to the wrong direction, or like if it's an opinion specifically targeting like them, like if it's like a young trans child seeing a stupid person online, like that can, for a younger person, that can be like so much more detrimental to them than it would be to someone who's older and like more mature. It's not good for younger people to be seeing all the discourse online. I feel like social media is something that should maybe have an age. I mean, actually, most of them do, but it's not very enforced. It should be something that's more enforced, maybe. Yeah, I don't really think it's healthy, and I don't really see why that would be beneficial to people, other than making friends. But I feel like there are like safer ways to make friends online, probably, than like on social media. Letting them have access to all of human knowledge on the internet is important, because it can be very beneficial to, like, especially when going through school. Like, it's like you can learn about absolutely anything, and yeah, it would definitely be unfair to cut off that resource. But I do think there needs to be some sort of way to, it's just the information, you know, and you're not seeing like biased news outlets' interpretation of the information or something like that. A child might read that and be like, oh, that's true, that is the truth, but no, that's someone's opinion. It's like, no, you want the objective facts to be able to learn.
Do you think we should have better ways of labeling content, maybe?
That could definitely help, yeah. I think maybe a good way of doing it would be for like phones and apps to all have built-in features where maybe the parent better like restrict what the child can see. Like, obviously that could have bad effects as well based on the parents, but then that's a problem with the parents. Then they're just a bad parent. But for the good parents who have their child's best interest in mind, they can see, oh, my child really wants to pursue art. Like, I won't take away all the like really powerful resources that can help artists like find reference and like drawing guides and tutorials and that sort of thing, and all the information people have gathered on how to get better at drawing. But I want to like shield my child from all the discourse at the same time. And I feel like if phones have like built-in ways to like easily do that, restrict exactly what a child can access on the internet, that could definitely be beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Having a way to restrict things that isn't 100% reliant on the parents, like some built-in features, would definitely be nice. Yeah. Because obviously some parents aren't going to care, but other parents don't know. Like, if they're not tech savvy, if they don't know what's posted on the internet, then how do they know what to prevent their child from seeing?
I think that's another problem on its own. I feel like there needs to be, I feel like parents need to be like more widely educated about the internet in some way for allowing their child to go on it. They need to understand what they're getting their child into.
I personally feel like the internet is a tool. And with tools, it's not necessarily the tool that's broken, but the people who use it. And so I think the internet should not be restricted, because the internet's not the thing putting content out there. It's the people that are adding stuff to the internet. The base of the problem is that people don't know how to use the internet or interact with people, or they do know how to use the internet and interact with people, and they do that in a way that is like harmful to others, or like specifically targets people. But then there's also the situation where like people are coming across content, like kids are coming across inappropriate content or things just because it's on the internet, and people haven't like set up things to like prevent that. I don't know, it's such a loaded question, because my instinctive response is yes. It's like, if people were educated more on like properly internet safety, not like, oh, don't talk to strangers, I feel like that would solve a lot of issues. Because if we were to raise awareness about how the internet works, how to avoid certain things, and why we should avoid those, then I feel like that would help out a lot. But at the same time, there's a lot of content that is out there that people can just access, and we do have restrictions with like the 18+, this is only for da-da-da-da-da. But I feel like it's a really complicated question. I feel like I don't have like certification or like the accurate knowledge to be able to like fully answer that, because it's a question that like everyone's asking, and it's like it affects politics, it affects apps like TikTok getting banned and things like that.
Do you think more so than the internet itself being restricted? Do you think there should be more restrictions on what can actually be put on the internet?
This could be because I'm thinking of it as like an information network or like a digital society. And if we think about like libraries, journals, interacting with people, it's like we have access to a lot of information already. See, this is why it's such a can of worms, because the context varies so like vastly, because it's like you change the context of one thing and the whole scenario changes, whereas if it was the same context, then it would be like an easier answer. But I don't feel like this has a proper answer to it. I feel like, because like I'm thinking about, well, what if we just restrict how long people can use the internet? But then there arises the issue of people will protest because it's like that's their time you're trying to control. Like you're trying to control what they're doing. But also I'm also thinking about like the materials, like who can be on the internet, like kids, small kids. The internet can be helpful in like learning and education, but if like a kid goes down the wrong route, then that can completely like change how they perceive things. I feel like kids, and when it comes to interaction with the internet, primarily with like mental health and development, that if they find like one thing that's like off or maybe not intended for kids, it can completely like alter how they perceive things, and thus can lead to like the development of mental health. I say this as like someone who grew up without the internet, because I was always grounded. So I was like the kid who was always like in the house reading books. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have the computers that we used at school. We did for like homework or like assignments, so we weren't really, and they had like major restrictions on them, so like everything was safe locked. You could only go onto the website. I got around them and played Minecraft, but like anyways. So like that was my experience. And then I have siblings who are like at least 10 years younger than me, who grew up with touchscreen phone and tablets and content, and the complete like difference in behavior is kind of wild. And like the development of mental health and how like it took such a downwards turn for them, it was so crazy, because like people will online will argue back and forth about how everything affects people, and then like being able to see it live and over like a progressive timeline, it's sad, but it's so interesting. I feel like the older we are when we interact with the internet, I feel like we have like a maturity and a separation between like the physical and the digital, almost like what's real and what's not real. And so I feel like having that distinction helps us categorize like conversations or interactions with people and events into ways where it's easier to process, and therefore doesn't have as large of a toll on our mental health as an individual. Whereas kids don't have that filter, so when they're interacting with this material, everything's real, everything's massive. This is the reality, right? This is what's going on. This is your now. They don't really have the ability to process beyond that window. So that's why I feel like for kids, probably should definitely be more restricted because of that processing window. And I don't think the amount of like instruction would affect that, because it's still like a developmental period. So I feel like they would still have that knowledge, but at the same time, your mental health is also tied in with like your emotions and your logistical reasonings. So when you pit logic against feelings, sometimes those feelings are more overwhelming than logic. And so those situations could become or made worse rather than helpful. So I feel like having both like knowledge about it and then the restrictions could help with that, and then also help people online, because a lot of kids will like lie about their age, or like will lie in order to get into contact with people or like cause problems, and they don't quite understand how big those problems are, and that it's also not creating a safe space, because if they lie about their age and then someone older thinks that they're a specific age, it creates a lot of nasty situations, which leads to talks about like grooming and like pedophilia. So I feel like to be safer for kids, it would be better to restrict internet access, at least up until like a certain age.
Yes. I think age, not really, but here's the thing, relating to age, it could be a little bit more restricted on the videos and content we can watch, because for example, my 4-year-old niece, she had YouTube Kids for a long time. The regulation on that app is so bad. There was a 3-hour video of a man standing, staring, wearing just shorts at the camera and breathing heavily. That's all it was. And then there's a lot of lack of moderation with like Minecraft content because it seems like kid game, you know, to YouTube itself, the corporation itself. So I've seen a lot of bad stuff with that. I do think that the biggest issue that I don't even think any sort of thing should allow is like not having confirmation that somebody, like actually strict confirmation that somebody's 18 before showing them anything like explicit, like NSFW explicit. Like that can be very, very, very harmful. Like I know I was exposed to that as a kid. It did not help much.
Yeah.
At all. Sometimes it'll assume it's made for kids when it's not. That is another thing that's happened a few times.
Yeah, just based on the label. Like Minecraft's a good example of that. It's considered a children's game. Therefore, they assume any Minecraft content is safe for children. It's not.
Yeah, especially with those fake accounts that steal the name of big creators and then they make like really weird content off of it. That is an example of something. It's just simply weird, like, and should probably be more restricted.
Yeah, I think certain things like Google has safe search. I think it should automatically be on. Like instead of you having to find it to turn it on, you should have to find it to turn it off, I think.
Yes. And then safe search, another issue with that is it doesn't always go through. Safe search doesn't always work. And they claim it's human moderation. Nobody would confirm a lot of the stuff unless they're really, really weird people, and if then they need to be taken off of the list of that.
Exactly.
The only human moderations I do know is when the really big creators have their like personal YouTube managers.
Yes, it would be nice if smaller creators were able to be in better contact with actual human beings instead of arguing with a robot in their email.
Aren't you a multi-millionaire company? Shouldn't you have like the money to hire people with living wages? Yeah, I don't think age restriction should be that like restricted more. I think what should happen is it should be more safely produced.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, you know this. I don't know how many other people do. I have so many younger siblings, ranging in so many ages, one of which is at the age that a lot of people start getting into like the online side of things and like getting Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all of that. And oh my gosh, yeah, I 100% believe the internet needs more restrictions. Like I work at a corner shop, right? So I see a lot of kids come in on their way home from school or on their way to school. And these kids are so young and they're pulling up Snapchat on their phone, they're texting their friends, and I'm like, you are literally 9 years old, you don't need this. I had quite a lot of restrictions. Like I didn't get Snapchat or anything until I was like 13. And even then it was like, I was only allowed my friends on it and that was it. So I don't really know how I ended up with online friends, but I 100% believe internet access does, especially the content consumed. Like some people are finding like awful things on there. Like one of the ones that I think of immediately is Snapchat Quick Add. Like that shouldn't be a thing because like you can get added by anybody. I say that as if I'm not on Discord and have added like a bunch of random people and now they're like some of my best friends, but a lot of that was quite restricted. Like you had to give your age and like when you applied and stuff, and obviously we're all content creators. We could literally go onto each other's streams and see exactly who we are. But like Snapchat Quick Add, you don't have that. You are adding a random person off of the internet who you don't know their age, you don't know their actual name because you see their username, you don't know what they look like, you don't know where they're from. Like it could literally be anybody on there, and that's terrifying. And some people are just adding these people.
Snapchat's definitely a scary one because with like Snap Map, I could literally see what room you're in your house. It zooms in so far.
Yeah.
I always have it off.
luckily you can edit that now. Like, I only have a few people who are able to see where I am on Snap Maps. Kengov, I'm pretty sure, is one of them.
I think so.
But like, I blocked so many people. I think I only have 4 people who can see it, because I'm like, these are 4 people who, if anything happened to me, they had easy access to contacting somebody who I'm related to. Not that I think it would happen, but there are a few people on my Snapchat who I don't need to see my location. And like, you can see like when they're home, you can see when they, like, it tells you when they're sleeping now, it shows you when they're driving. I'm like, I don't need all of these people to know that. And if you're adding random people off a quick ad, they literally can click your name and get directions to where you are.
Exactly.
And that's terrifying.
Yeah,
and
no
people are
one-
just like adding random folk.
Yeah, no one else has actually brought up Snapchat, but I think that's a really good
Really?
example. Yeah.
Snapchat's the main one that anytime I think of like internet access, it's normally Snapchat's the first one I think of, and probably Discord as well, because Discord you also don't really know a lot. But a lot of people who end up on Discord are normally added to servers, and they normally have some form of verification. But yeah, Snapchat's the first one I think of when I think of like internet access, because like you can get some very creepy people on there.
It's just so difficult to truly verify anything on the
Oh,
internet.
Yeah, like there's no way. The only, like, obviously with like Discord, the only thing they can do is like applications in which you say your age, but even then, like, some people just lie. They have to be very, very careful, no matter what age you are with internet access. But I think, yeah, Snapchat's the one where the first one I think of when I'm like, that needs something done to it, because that is ridiculous.
Yes. So I was 4 years old when I got my first computer, and while it was great as a kid, I don't really think I should have had that much access to technology and computers that young, because, you know, there's a bunch of weirdos on the internet. So on one hand, while I'm really good at spotting scams and everything now, do I really need to be exposed to that? I still think I should have been allowed to, you know, like, have my computer just, you know, a lot more locked down than it was.
Yeah. It's almost like in schools how they restrict it so you can't access certain
Yeah.
websites. It's almost like we need that at home. We need parents to learn how to do that.
That and timing. Like, I would get up before my parents on a weekend, and at one point in time, I distinctly remember my dad getting so mad about this because he built my first computer. So this is kind of like generational hobby for me. But he was so mad, I went and downloaded a bunch of like those free trials from, like, what was it, Big Fish Games or whatever. And by the time he woke up, my computer was so full of viruses. He was like, now I have to spend my day off fixing this. So at the very least, keeping kids away from doing that would be good.
Yeah, I think it's in part an education thing, because you don't really expect your child to download viruses, but you should probably still tell them it's a possibility so that they don't do it.
So they don't find out the hard way like I did.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's honestly not having to find out the hard way is a huge part of this question, I think. Like, that might
Oh,
be
yeah.
something different when, like, people around our age have children. Obviously, some people my age, at least, have children already, but because we grew up with internet, we might be a little more than just the don't talk to strangers. We might be able to sort of tell our children, like, hey, don't do this, it's a virus. Don't do that, it's a scam.
Yeah, I got lucky with my dad being like one of the biggest computer nerds back then when they first started coming out. But I am definitely that for my niece and nephews. I have had to, my sister is like 15 years older than me, so she's not as tech savvy as I am. But back when I still talked to her, I was the one that had to sit my nephews and niece down. And whenever I would see it happening and be like, don't do that. Take it from experience. Don't do it.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. Do you think those sort of things affected your mental health? Like having access to a computer that young and having to learn on your own, like being given the computer but not necessarily given the tools and information to use it?
Definitely, because I was, you know, all those teenager magazines and stuff they had online, and going through that, like, without an unrestricted amount of access, I was like 14 and I was like checking out the 17.com website, and, you know, that's meant for like high school kids, not middle schoolers. So I was always thinking I was so far behind the curve, even though I really wasn't.
I definitely think that internet access should be restricted a lot more generally, just like in general. A lot of websites and social medias being 13 plus now is very good, and I like that it's being enforced a lot more. Because when I was younger and I wanted to be on social media, I was like 10, 11, 12, and I would just be like, oh, my birthday is da 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 da, and then it would let me in. And some kids still do that, of course, but they're being a lot more careful with it and making sure that like children don't get access to content that they shouldn't have access to. It's a problem of parental restriction as well, because any kid that you just throw an iPad or a cell phone into their hand, they will figure out how to see something they're not supposed to see. And kids probably won't like being restricted from what they have access to, but it shouldn't be so easy for kids to see things and find things that they shouldn't be seeing. So I think definitely, especially mature or explicit content should be easily labeled and easily restricted for younger people on the internet to be able to see.
It's difficult because it is partially dependent on the parents, and you can't force parents to do that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Do you think there should be more like hard and set restrictions to what you can actually post on the internet in order to prevent that, or do you think it's pretty much all on age restriction?
I'm in the ballpark where I don't think a lot of things should be restricted from the posting standpoint. Like definitely on, safe for work websites. Like don't post anything explicit. Don't, I feel like that is definitely like a good place where we're in, where like you can't post specifically explicit things on safe for work websites, but it is also insanely easy for people to get access, people who shouldn't, to get access to explicit websites.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think restrictions on posting would be super helpful though, because that's another thing where there will be people who will do it anyway. From either side, like people will be posting that anyway and people will be finding it anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. It's the internet. You can always find it. It doesn't matter what it is, you can find it.
Exactly. Especially because there's so many people posting at one time. Like everybody is on social media, everybody is posting things every day, and it's so like, I know that they have content monitors that like don't require a human being, but bypassing those is easy, and people are always going to post stuff they shouldn't be posting.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to keep up with it, I'm sure.
A lot of places on the internet are trying to like restrict the internet more to people who are like under 18 or under 13, which I think is a good thing. I think that internet access should be restricted more when you're younger, and like at 13 and 18 respectively, you get more access. I'm not sure if it's equally, but it's both on like the services, the internet services, and the parents. It is on both of those parties. It is on both parties to ensure that the children aren't getting into internet places they shouldn't be. I feel like it should be more on the parents than the services, because realistically there is only so much you can do as someone who is providing these services to restrict the content, especially if someone's like an adventurous little kid and is just gonna click, yeah, sure, I'm over 13, even though they're really not. It's because kids aren't gonna always follow the rules. So
yeah,
like the internet, the like services on the internet can set those restrictions and say like, here is where you shouldn't be, but there's only so much you can do without getting into like slightly illegal territory. The other part then falls on the parents or guardians of the children, the people who are looking after the kids so that they don't get to places where they shouldn't be. I do think that type of content is also a different thing, because I'm not sure exactly if it should be restricted. I mean, age versus type of content, that's its own thing. Age is its own thing that needs to be restricted with various kinds of content. I think age and types of content are like they go hand in hand. Age should be restricted to the to different types of content, and also to a certain degree amount of content. Whereas like when you are completely of age, I'm not sure if it should really be restricted. Like different types of content shouldn't really be put out there as much as other types of content.
You think that the type of content available should be restricted more so than who can see it? Like certain things just shouldn't be posted at all in the first place.
Yeah. And I also feel like certain types of content might not need to be restricted, but should have like warnings in place for people that either shouldn't or don't want to see that kind of content. Like game ratings and movie ratings are a great example of this being done, because it's like even if you are of age, you can look at the warnings to see if there are anything see if there's anything you don't want to see. And if there are things you don't want to see, you can just ignore that. There is enough content out there for you to ignore some things. There is probably too much content out there.
So in America, something will be rated for 18 and older, whereas in Canada, it's for 14 and older. And so in America, you can't go see those things in theaters, but again, no one's stopping you from seeing it online.
Yeah, that is another thing, is a lot of places don't really have too many restrictions when it comes to who's watching what. I do know Netflix like has their parental controls thing where like if it's rated M or like higher, then you have to put in a PIN, or if the parents have turned that on. If they've turned that off, like my parents have, because we're all adults. But that's a good way to have the bar in place of you shouldn't be watching this, because then you have to go ask someone who does have the PIN to grant you access to watch this. And if they think you shouldn't have access to watching this, they're not gonna let you have access to watching it. And that's a great way where both guardians and internet companies work well together to help keep kids safe.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I like the idea of letting people see the internet. However, with the most recent years and everything like that, I believe that kids are getting way too much screen time. I don't know if that's just me, but I feel as though like kids should not be having as much screen time as like if you were a teenager, or like I feel like, you know, parents are just dropping kids off with like iPads, cell phones, everything like that, and it's just they're not getting enough time to experience the real world. Because like, yeah, I'm happy where I'm at. I experienced the real world. I was at the time of GameCubes and shit, so I didn't have like super cool PCs. The best cool PC was a Dell. That was really it. And then there wasn't Twitch, there wasn't anything like that. It was just I could just enjoy myself. I do feel like the internet is taking over a lot of people's brains, and the, you know, popularity count is like how popular you are on the internet matters IRL now. That matters in your IRL time. And no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Like I'm just like I'm a streamer that people can like have known of. Oh yeah, you've seen Master Oni in that one, like, yeah, I've seen them, I've known them before. I want to be like that. I don't want to be like super popular, and like I don't really care about popularity. I just feel like kids nowadays are, you know, counting popularity on the internet as something they should have IRL. Like they should be popular because they're popular on the internet. I don't believe that they should be having technology at a super young age. Maybe like I got a phone when I was like, I don't know, like 14. That's when I started watching Minecraft and stuff, and I started watching all the Minecraft YouTubers and wanting to be like them, and that's when I started getting things. So there's a lot of younger people that are on Twitter, and it's like, as somebody who's an adult, it's like, yeah, I have to interact with some younger people on the internet, because like, you know, it's the Minecraft community, you can't really do anything about it. But I feel like people as young as like maybe 12 should probably not be allowed to experience what Twitter is, because there's so much horrible shit that goes on Twitter. There's so much horrible, like, you know, negativity that's gonna impact their life, and I want, like, people to have a good impact on them, like a hero or something like that, but I don't want them to learn about that type of world until they're at least, like, in a teenager.
Like you're saying, there's so many things children just, they don't need to see that.
There was video game stories. You probably knew about the M for mature, T for teen, that kind of thing. So when I was I was a kid, I wanted a game that was T for teen. My parents would be like, no, you're not allowed that because obviously it's teen. So when I became like 10, they were more apt to giving me a game that was worth that and everything. So I felt like restrictions when I was born was a little bit better than the restrictions now, because I'll be honest, I'll be working at my job doing some landscaping. I see a kid, like, their mom is like, go distract themselves, like a kid that's like looking like they 5, they're playing on an iPad. I'm like, dude, let them enjoy the world outside. Like, don't just give them an iPad and like say, like, do whatever you want, little guy. Like, it's not gonna help them. It's not gonna help them discover. It's not gonna help them, like, you know, get that sense of what the IRL real world is gonna look like. I just, you know, people spend too much time just trying to distract their kids. I kind of wish that it was like how it was at the beginning before all this like computer technology came out, where you could like actually hang out with your friends and then sometimes go on your GameCube and have some fun. I kind of want to see people enjoy their lives instead of spending so much time on the internet. Now, the only reason I do it is because I really want to become a content creator and like be like those cool Minecraft YouTubers that I used to watch when I was a kid. I want to be like them, but I recommend doing it when you're like more leaning towards like maybe 16, like starting that, because like you have a whole life ahead of you. You don't want to just be on the internet. Like, you can like find out that the real world is actually a really cool place. Maybe life sucks at the moment, but it sucks for everybody starting out, you know, that kind of thing. But at least kids will have a chance to find their, you know, their self out there in the real world and not on an iPad, because you can't really make much significance on an iPad. I just, you know, I think it would be more beneficial for people to spend more time IRL than super amounts online, especially younger selves.